drive the point home. The light squared bishop on a great square, which is probably why it instantly gets traded off. And yeah, Magnus not particularly happy with the lack of scope for the dark squared bishop in the long run. Why not lash out at this straight away?
This is getting fun now because there's a lot of tension on that left flank, but also big knight jumps on that right side as well of the board. The white knight also heading to f5, but I like this approach by Magnus. He's targeting the base of that mini pawn chain to try to activate his bishop on a7. The one move you definitely don't want to make is pawn takes pawn. You double up the a pawns, you allow the bishop to slide over, pick up the c5 pawn and come under a lot of pressure on the a file, and it's under these pressure moments that mistakes happen. And for Alireza, an inaccuracy on the board. He tries to complicate matter under 3 minutes, d4, and a lot of tension there. Which pawn is Magnus going to pick up?
Yeah, probably this pawn that's just pushed, given a question mark. I just want to mention, Magnus has not spent over 30 seconds for a single move so far in this game. That one he spends 22 seconds on. He opens up the lines of the rooks. One set of rooks leave the board. I don't really see what Alireza has in mind, though. That whole left flank is exploding. The pawn chain has been eroded. Black's bishop, it's only a matter of time before it gets back into the game, and it's going to come back with full force. The clock situation and board as well against Firouzja.
The only explanation for this trade that he allowed and is aligned further on is that he did the rook lift, trying to line up the queen and the rook against Magnus's only semi-weakness, which is going to be the b7 pawn once the trades on b4 happen. Pawn takes pawn, rook takes pawn, trying to get to that, but that weakness is easily defendable by Magnus's rook sliding over.
And these moves that you see right now, for example, forcing the knight away, if the knight goes to e6, for example, it's a very natural move because once the pawn on b4 drops, the knight on e6 is naturally attacking the pawn on c5 together with the bishop. So this is playing into Magnus Carlsen's plan. It's making his moves a little bit more natural to make, which is not good when you have less than half the time of your opponent.
Yeah, those two white pawns are about to drop off. He's hoping here for Firouzja to create some counterplay with his own knights, I guess. The white rook and white queen quite active. Magnus frowning. This is Magnus's longest think of the game so far. He knows that he has the advantage, a draw enough as well. And sometimes that's a situation you don't necessarily want to be in, where you're caught in two minds. Do you press an advantage or do you just try to shore up the defenses? Magnus, meanwhile, what is the most risk-free move? I think that's what he's asking himself.
And that's the thing, right? Alireza is in a must-win game right now. It's a dead man's draw for him. It's as good as losing. So he needs to, even if he doesn't want to, create these dynamics on the board, even if that means objectively he'll end up in a worse position. He's ready to sacrifice material to get that piece activity. Whether it's a knight planted on d6 or the open b line for his rook or queen, Alireza wants a fight, and Magnus ticking down on the clock.
I think almost breathing a sigh of relief that Magnus is taking so long, trying to work out how it's possible to maybe put the result of this game beyond doubt. It's also giving Alireza plenty of time to think. You can see he's not hunching his shoulders quite as much as before. He's been able to use Magnus's time to hopefully calculate some of the moves that he's going to play too. I'm not sure it's enough to get him to play nice and freely, but you have noticed a slight change in his demeanor over the last 30 seconds or so.
Definitely, and there we go. Magnus doesn't play the best move according to the eval bar. Question mark appears, but he's trying to play safety first chess. We cannot blame him for that, and there we go. Alireza knows a rook trade would guide this game closer to a draw. That's not enough, so he has to gamble. He has to speculate here. He keeps the rooks on.
But crucially, he did it instantaneously.
He's going to have to do that for a bunch more moves.
With tension on the clock and the board. Rook e4, this does allow Magnus to again trade on b4 if he so wants. Magnus, he slows down, he does take. After rook takes pawn, that rook on d8 can slide one step forward and defend that b7 pawn. And still the attack on Alireza's weakness on c5 continues.
Alireza, he played the previous move instantly. He's gone back into the tank here. About 15-20 seconds invested and counting. Problem is that black bishop is so close now to breaking its way back into the game. The black knight coming back, the white knight's so far unable to get in.
You know, if you have to beat Magnus Carlsen, then you need to make the most of every single aspect and element of the game. You have to be up on the clock. You have to play the opening perfectly. Middle game, try to complicate things. End game, technique on point. And so far, the biggest problem in this match for Alireza has been the clock. Because in those final moments, we've seen the blunders happen.
It's beginning to look like the way to beat Alireza in this grand final is to give him choice. Because that is what Magnus Carlsen is using against him right now. I'm going to give you choices where you're trying to calculate when maybe the position and your clock certainly is calling for you to use your intuition a little bit more. Otherwise, you risk making mistakes in another minute. And it seems like 10 times out of 10, Alireza is choosing to hard calculate instead of trusting his intuition, which is odd because his intuition is so good. That's the reason why he is such a beast when his time gets low.
Exactly, Mr. Intuition, and right now Magnus has won a pawn. The black bishop is out. Most importantly, if the white rook goes to the top of the board with a check, the black bishop can drop back and block. That doesn't look super healthy for Magnus, but it's only temporary, and the black bishop is going to save the day. Alireza struggling to find any attacking resources, any follow-up to that check.
And this is concerning, right? You make a move, you give up a pawn, your opponent takes the bait, and then you again go into a tank, make a move that you're not super happy with, and it turns out to be a blunder. Alireza coming in with a double attack, but there are checks that he needs to be careful about.
He's taking massive risk here. There are two checks that are very tempting for Magnus Carlsen. The black rook now able to infiltrate on the first rank. Magnus leaned back. I think he spotted something. The black bishop could maybe even jump in and sacrifice itself. Something similar to what we showed earlier. Alireza smiling. He knows he's blundered. He spotted the refutation. Black has multiple winning moves here.
And Magnus starts with a flashy bishop takes pawn check on the board. And if this is captured, the knight will jump in with a check, forcing white's king to disconnect with the knight on g3. Knight d3 coming in, queen takes, knight coming in. Alireza cannot believe it. He's the master of tactics, but he's the one on the receiving end of this one. Magnus, super sharp today.
He's under 1 minute. He's got only a few seconds left. And look at this, walking forward with his king. He's now down 2 pawns, but this white king is simply not going to survive. The black king, in the meantime, protected by its army. The pawn will block now. Magnus's queen can even block, and this one is going to be over. Magnus will surely not let Firouzja back off the hook there, and there we go. It's actually checkmate to end this game.
Checkmate on the board, and it started with bishop takes f2. At 3.5 minutes, plays 1. Magnus Carlsen takes the full point, and with that, the first set in this grand final. Advantage, Team Liquid.